Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Books You Can Sink Your Teeth Into podcast. I am your host, Brandon A. Miller, and thank you. It's great to see you. Glad you're joining us today. Hope I have a good podcast for you. Lots and lots of news to discuss. Lots of updates. So I have a brand new. I don't know if you can tell. This is a kind of a leather covered notebook. It was given me as a gift, and it's I really like it. And I jotted some notes down in here for the podcast today, and so that I don't forget all the exciting stuff that we want to go over. And so just to get some updates, I did meet with some local authors. I met with Clinton J. Katika, and his book is Dead Adrenaline, the Dead Adrenaline series. Okay, and he is working hard on book number 3, and he said that it is a it is a big one. A big book. He's written oh geez, I don't know, it's like over 80,000 words, and he's still working on it. It's really exciting, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it. So yeah, it's his third. He says it's gonna be the last in the series. Um, so I'm really excited about getting it, and he is getting close. So hopefully we'll have that in our hands soon. In other news, I met with my co-author, Beth Ann Flowers, and about the Raven Sight series, and some exciting stuff here is that we not only we're working on book number 3, and we have some exciting news coming up. We'll talk about that in a little bit, uh, but we also got to meet a real fan of the books, and this lady was I won't say her name, but it was a real fan, a real person, not imaginary, and yeah, and we were talking about the characters and everything, and she was really into it. It was so nice to actually meet somebody and just kind of talk to them. And yeah, so we're actually going to give her a small little bit in our next book coming up. Um, yeah, so that was really exciting that we got to meet somebody. And yeah, we worked on some stuff for book number 3. We got some exciting news coming up where we've got some new ideas of how to promote and whatnot. And um, yeah, we're gonna. So really had a good meeting with with um, with Beth Ann Flowers, and we really appreciate the time and everything that we got going that she does for the book. And yeah, we're writing away, and so it's been fun. It really has been fun. So yeah, so don't forget to buy, if you haven't already, to get your copy of Dead Adrenaline. It's on Amazon. Just look up Dead Adrenaline, Clint Kurtika, Kurtyka. I'm sorry if I Tyka. Sorry about that. Um, look it up on Amazon. Easy to buy. If you're looking for Raven Sight the series, again, go to Amazon. Look up Raven Scythe, Raven, and then Scythe, and put in Beth Ann Flowers, Grant Miller. It should come right up for you. So, yeah, make sure you get the book so that when book number 3, actually for both of us, for Dead Adrenaline series, book number 3 coming out, Raven Scythe book number 3 coming out, and for the Shiokawa murder mysteries, although I've got my outline in my head, been kind of working hard on the Raven Scythe one, so we'll have to Detective Shiokawa and Jones are just going to have to wait a little bit before we get back to them. So my goodness, what a lot to talk about. So this week we are going to continue our discussion on the Gnostics. The book that's written by Elaine Pagels, and I'll put a copy of the cover up here on the screen. Just to reiterate, I listened to a podcast from Dr. Bart Ehrman of UNC, and he's the one who wrote this book, Misquoting Jesus. And we're going to dive into this one in a week or two. Another excellent book. But anyway, on his podcast, he was talking about this Dr. Elaine Pagel is going to be one of the guest speakers at some big seminar they got coming up. And he was saying how much her book, inspired him. And that he said, he made his comment was, everyone should have a copy of this book on their bookshelf. And I thought, wow, because he's a really good professor, a real good learned doctor. And for him to say that, I thought to myself, okay, there's maybe a book I should check out. So I got a sample on Kindle, and I was really blown away. So I bought the book on Kindle, and I'm going to buy the actual book and get it shipped because that's how good it is. And so, what is it about? So when I say Gnostics, people, as soon as I say that, people go, "Hold that thought. I'll be right back," and they run away. I don't know what it is about the Gnostics that just got such a, I guess, a bad reputation. But actually, you can kind of see why, because and what this book does is it kind of shows us the history of the early Christian church, which I feel is something that everyone should learn and know about, because I feel that we live in a days of well, not a days, but a like a kind of a cloud of, oh well, the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the letters of Paul, they were there. Jesus wrote them down, and forgive me, I'm sorry. Don't mean to be. Please don't. If anybody, don't take offense. I'm going to try to be as respectful as I can. So, everybody I mentioned, you know, Jesus, Paul, all of these, I've got the highest, the apostles, the disciples, highest respect for, and may God be pleased with them and bless them. So the no, the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, were not written until Mark was the first, probably between, I think, 40 to 50 years after Jesus died. So it's quite a long time. And and then Matthew and Luke copied bits of Mark. They also copied from another source. It appears. Um, it appears that's the most common theory. And then John was like about 100 years after that, later, about 20 years after that. And so all this time, was there no other writings, right? We know Paul wrote some letters, but I mean, for the typical Christian, that's it. Those are the books. Those are what we that's that. But that's not really the case. And what the this book by Elaine, Dr. Pagels points out is that there were other gospels out there, which makes sense, right? You would think that there got to be more, especially if you have like Matthew and Luke quoting from like unknown sources. That means there's got to be other things out there. So um, these other gospels. And so what happened is, before the wars, there was an Egyptian shepherd or somebody out in the desert, and he stumbled across. He was looking for water, and he was digging, and he stumbled across a jar, and in it were all these scrolls. And these scrolls eventually got sold and taken up, and these were the Nag Hammadi scrolls. These is where because were the location that were found. And these were, we had like the Gospel of Peter, the Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Mary, Gospel of Truth, another Gospel of John. And these were termed the Gnostic Gospels. And it's quite amazing to, number one, know the volume of these other ones, but also does no one know about them? Well, it was because they were mostly destroyed. And thank goodness that there was a monastery nearby where Nag Hammadi, that's where why they call it that. And a monk or monks decided they needed to preserve these. And they put them and they hid them and they buried them. And for our sake, thank goodness that they did, because it helps us understand the early um, the early Christianity as it started out. And it makes a lot of sense because we knew that before everything, before the Bible, the New Testament as we know it became canonized with the 27 books, the 27 letters books that we have. Um, there was a lot going on. There were a lot of different types of thoughts and opinions on the message that Jesus brought. And so when like we look at like what the early church was, what was it? Well, it was mostly people going to each other's houses, and there was no real structure. Both men and women were conducting the remembrances and the services and things like that they knew. And it wasn't until they started to gain, like, with more and more people, that then institutions started to rise where you actually had a group of people. And it was because of this then, these groups, then men had to become leaders and all. And which isn't which when we look at this, I'm gonna kind of just go down one stream here. um, we look at this and we see that one group, and there was somebody was a from we have an apostle, a disciple, an apostle, and then from them was a bishop, priest, deacon, and then the laity, and we had that structure. And um, as the structure took hold, we know that in that there were a number of divisions. I mean, you can look at Paul's letters and you can see this, when he said that, oh, these people coming from Jerusalem and telling you, they're all wrong. Listen to me, I'm right. So we can see that there were divisions there. And Paul points it out in his letters. The other thing that we see is there are discrepancies in what belief is. So like when you look at these, especially when you add in these other gospels that were found, like, how did the resurrection happen, right? Some question, even, did it happen? Was it a physical one? Was it a spiritual one? And there's like all these different opinions going back and forth. um, Same thing with crucifixion. How was it on the cross, like traditionally people know it as a cross, but maybe it was a stake, maybe it was a tree. You have these different thoughts. It's so what really happened? Well, we don't know, because everything is, you have all, we don't have like a definitive person on the spot saying, like, historical writing. We have a number of these things that were written afterwards, giving their different views. And so what happened is that then, as like these bodies grew, some bodies had more power than others, more money, more power. And it, like the one in particular, the one in Rome, which had, the bishop, that could trace it back to Peter, with the priests and the deacons and laities were the ones. And they didn't like this challenge. So when you look at, like, for example, in the Eastern Church, they had their own, um, the Eastern Church had their own uh, gospels that they followed, that taught them different things compared to the Ethiopian church, which actually has more books to their New Testament, compared to the Gnostic church that we found, like, where the scrolls are from, that was near in Egypt. And one of the real big differences, not only was it in the structure, but it also had to do with uh, the role of women in the church. And so Rome started to say women had no place in the church, whereas early days women were very instrumental. You go back and look at, you can even see stories of Mary Magdalene and all, and the Samaritan at the well. I mean, in fact, I think in the Orthodox tradition, the Orthodox remember her as one of the greatest uh, converters, who went out and converted more people than anybody else. Uh, and then Paul even mentions that there was an apostle, a lady apostle, who was equal to him, Junita or something like that. It's in Corinthians. I can't remember her name offhand. It should have been good to, actually probably should have looked that up and put it in the notebook, but I didn't. But women had power. And then the Roman Church started to remove it. So the Gnostics were actually challenging this. They were challenging it on two fronts. Now, this is not theology. This is like, they challenged the power structure that was going on, and they also challenged the role of women in the religion, because for the Gnostics, it was, you know, um, hey, women could do the sacraments. Women could play a role in things, and so um, there was two challenges. Now, theologically, just like uh, Gnostics had various divisions of theology, just like Christians do. Um, but what's interesting is when you read this book and you read some of the things that the Gnostics believe, and then today you can find those beliefs, guess what? In the evangelical churches, believe it or not. In fact, maybe next week I'll bring up a couple examples of that. Um, so it's kind of interesting how we go the full circle. But in any event, we know that uh, the Roman Church is the one that won out. Um, the books were selected by the bishop of Alexander in Egypt, who selected the 27, the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the letters of Peter, Paul, and uh, and the reason they were selected was because they wanted to standardize the theology that they were preaching, and they wanted to stop. They called it heretical, the teachings of the Gnostics, the teachings of the Eastern Church, etc. And so when I say Eastern Church, I don't mean the Orthodox. That split didn't come till later. I'm talking about the church of the that was in that was in the Far East, and Nestorians, something like that. Nestorians. I think that there's the church, the Syrian church, is the like one of the last remaining that holds to theirs. I could be wrong on that, but anyway, that's the when I say Eastern, that's what I mean. I don't mean the Orthodox. That came later, um, but yeah, and then once these books were standardized, then it became incumbent that we need to get rid of these other gospels, and that because they don't preach the same theology, that they're not in line with what's being maintained, um, and so they need to be destroyed. And so we fortunately have this one monk or monks who saved these records for us. And for me, it's you need to understand your history. So if you're Christian, you need that doesn't matter what if you're Catholic or Orthodox or evangelical or Presbyterian or Methodist or whatever you might, or Mormon or whatever you might be. You need to understand the history, right? It's important. It's important to know that there were multiple divisions. You don't have to have it's a it's a one, that's never changed and it's been one standard all this time. No, there was a number of sayings and things that were floating around that then became standardized as the church grew in power and became the official religion of Rome. And it's important to understand that, not hide from it. You know, it's like, unfortunately, the Gnostics then got such a bad rap because then the main church started saying those guys are heretics. They're a bunch of Looney Tunes. Don't listen to them. And that's really unfortunate because that lasts till today. Like I said, you do say anything to anybody about, hey, do you know that the Gnostics said? And it's like, hold that thought. I'll be right back. Yeah, and they never come back. Um, it's a shame because like one of the main uh, bishops of the Gnostics, his name was Valentinus. Uh, you know, he was apparently one step down in you know from Paul. So it was Paul, and then one of Paul's main disciples. I forget the name, and then Valentinus. So he was right there. I mean, he was like there's very few really solid like Christian, like he learned from him who learned from him who learned from him. Very few. There's very 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 weak actually in these things, but this one has actually a strong lineage, and so it's I think like yeah, well if you want to, you know, this would be somebody to listen to, and if you and I, just reading this book and kind of seeing some of the things that he was saying um, makes a lot of sense because you know these ideas came from Paul, who didn't really ever. Yeah, okay, so there's a big debate out there, right? Did Paul really meet Jesus or not? Well, he had a vision of him. He didn't see him. He didn't physically see him. He didn't physically was it with him during the 3 years of ministry. Uh, so did he just make it all up, or did actually something happen? And, if you're a person of faith, you believe that something did happen. Whether it was a spiritual form of Jesus or not. But um, the uh, the thing is that you know this Bishop Valentinus was one step below, so that's a good lineage that you can have. And what's also interesting, and this is kind of lost, because when you standardize things, you're able to take away things that are controversial. So when we look at, like, okay, there's the Father, and there's the Son, and then there's the Holy Spirit. Well, Father masculine, Son masculine. Holy Spirit in Greek is neutral, right? It's a neutral, it doesn't have a male or female. But in Hebrew, the word for spirit is feminine. Haha. So masculine, masculine, feminine. Uh, they didn't like that. And so they decided to make it neutral, use the Greek and make it neutral and keep that out. Whereas, like Bishop Valentine said, well, wait a minute, let's look at this, right? What language did Jesus speak? Oh, he spoke Aramaic, so it's a version of Arabic. It's a version of, it's an offshoot of the um, of Hebrew and all. And you know, if you were to say that, that word would have been feminine. So it's a feminine gender. So it's interesting, and that we kind of, anyways. There's little things like that. Like, for example, when we talk about the Torah, we talk about the what Christians say, the Old Testament versus the New Testament. Well, the Old Testament is basically the Hebrew Bible. But when you say old, you kind of mean like, okay, it's old, it's done, it's over, and now we have the new, which is the new. So it's just words like that, where I think maybe a modern day Christian today wouldn't even think of it. They would just say, uh, Old Testament. I don't even think, but it's that language that then drives additional, like, maybe unknown thoughts. So anyway, this Gnostic book is really good, and I hope you read it. By the way, talking about uh, feminine, masculine words, we have, like, in English, we don't really use it. We don't really have, like if you were to say mother, like, in Spanish, it's la madre, so the mother, the feminine, la. Whereas father is, oops, oh my gosh. Here I am, I'm talking, and I froze. Father, father, father. Uh, Padre. Jeez, I whiz. So L, padre, right? So it's a masculine and feminine. Now, English, we kind of lost that. So, well, we did lose it. We don't really have these things, these cases anymore. Um, But when we look at words, those connotations still matter, as well as images. When you have an image, so of, for example, when you have an image of Jesus being a white male with blue eyes and brown hair, that then drives your subconscious to think of things in certain ways. And so it's just the same, like, just like that, words do the same thing in our subconscious. Old versus new, feminine versus a masculine noun, um, or just not making it anything, making it like a neutral. Lots of things that go on. So anyway, for me, that's all really fascinating. So hope I didn't bore you all too much with this. But next week, so anyway, wonderful book, recommended. Next week, we're going to go to Bart Ehrman's Misquoting Jesus. This is another book that's just wonderful. It's engaging, just fascinating, and he does a wonderful job. So we'll talk about this one next time, and until then, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Up next, we have our famous celebrity. So, as you all know, it's my little comedy bit. We have our famous celebrity, Count Vlad, will be flying in to tell us what he thinks about the well, whatever it is that's on his mind. All right, thanks everybody. Take care. Cheers. Hello, everyone. It is I, Count Vlad. I am a vampire, and I am here to say hello and good day, good evening. Actually, the vampires can't come out during the day. It is the nighttime here, and I am here at the Grand Meal Studio, and he invited me to talk today to you. So, I am going to talk to you, and the first thing I am going to say is that the book right here, the Dead Adrenaline, where I spoke to the author. His name is, I'm going to try to pronounce it, Clinton J. Cortica, something like that. So, anyway, he told me that I am not in the book. I can't believe it. He promised that I, Count of Vlad, was going to be in his book, and I told him that if you put me in the book, that you will sell 1 million copies. But he didn't do it, so I don't think he will sell 1 million copies of his book number three. So, but the Count is excited because the author, Mr. Koitika, is a good friend with my good friend, the Count of Fangora. And Count of Angora and I, we went fishing, and we tried to catch the fishy. Count of Angora did a really good job. He caught the fishy. The Count of Lad could not. I had to use a spell. I had to go sleep fishy, and then I could pull them in. But I could not catch them on the rod and wheel. So, but Count of Angora did. So he's a very good fisherman. So congratulations to him. It was nice to see him. So then I flew back, and I was then talking to the authors of the Ravensight book, the authors, Beth Ann Flowers and Grant A. Mealor. And we were talking about the book number three, where the Count is going to be in it. Yes. And so everyone has to buy the first two Ravensight so that you can know that when the Count comes in, how I'm going to fix everything, all the problems. And so they were talking to me about the book, and they wanted my opinions, and I gave it to them. And then they said, we're not going to use any of it. But that's their fault. So if they don't use what I say to do, then do not expect to sell 1 million copies. But if they follow what the Count says, they will sell 1 million copies. So they should listen to the Count. But yeah, so anyway, the Count is doing well, and we want to thank everyone who watches the podcast, and please tell your friends. Until next time, adieu.